Now, Jubilee Vice Chairperson David Murathe's endorsement of ODM leader Raila Odinga as President Uhuru Kenyatta's successor has ignited a fresh political debate. To some, the endorsement is to excite Odinga's followers. To others, it is a symbol of the mountain giving back to the lake. An endorsement that has been seconded by KOTU Secretary General Francis Atwoli.
I think Murathe was right, and I want to endorse his proposal as a person, as I continue to consult as Francis. Indeed, it is true, Honorable Raila Odinga, for a long time he has fought for fairness, truthfulness, straightforwardness. If he will offer his candidature, I'm sure by 10 a.m., I don't know the date, 2022, he will be the fifth Kenya's president.
Good evening once again and welcome to Pundits Night. I am Abu Bakr Abdullahi. We are discussing the Raila presidency, the endorsement at least of Raila presidency. You can be part of this discussion. Tweet us at Pundits Night. The hashtag to use is Pundits Night at TV47KE. You can text us on 22047. Call us on the number on your screen. Your voice and your opinion as the viewer matters. Let's bring in our guests tonight. As always, our residential analyst, Herman Manyora, joins us, our residential analyst. Evans Wafula, political analyst, and Gabriel Muduma, political analyst as well, join us tonight on the show. Good evening, gentlemen, and thank you for making time for us tonight.
Good evening, Abu Bakr. Thanks for having us.
All right, Herman, let me start with you. If one is to ask, there's an endorsement from David Murathe, the vice chairperson of the ruling Jubilee Party, and the KOTU Secretary General Francis Atwoli have any political significance? What will the answer be, Haman?
That will not be a very difficult question to answer. Mm-hmm. That already the political landscape is almost like a volcano. So that Murathe investment, seconded by Atwoli, is not something in this country you can dismiss, whether they are pro-Raila or else. Remember when about there are debts between the Kikuyu or the mountain people. 6th of this sanction in Mbali in 2018. The whole political landscape was shaken to the core. This one, coming after that, is not, a give. Correctly or not, people seem, when Murathe has spoken. I think they are close buddies. That may not be the case.
Haman will
that's
come
the perception.
On whose behalf probably he speaks and he spoke in reference to the endorsement. But when you say it's not something that can be ignored, you say so because of a political clout that the two have attached to them?
Definitely, David Murathe is not just another person in this country who speaks. People listen. When Atwoli speaks, these are heavyweights. Mm-hmm. These are people who carry a lot of weight, a lot of muscle in this country. I know enemies, there are people who like them, there are people who don't like them, but the carries weight. Remember, Atwoli did the thing by saying that President Uhuru was home and that there should be a referendum to change the constitution. Mm-hmm. Some people thought all to pass. When Atwoli speaks, as of Kenyan politics.
All right, Haman, hold on that thought. Let me bring in Gabriel Muduma to the discussion. Gabriel, judging by the duo endorsement, if one is to politically observe relatively the same question, is there any significance attached to that?
Thank you, and once again, thanks for having me. This is actually a great opportunity. I did not get much of what my very good friend, Professor Herman Manyora, was saying. He was breaking in, he was coming in and off. But I could kind of figure out what he was saying when he said, Murathe and Atwoli. not people who just speak to speak. But you have to realize two things. One is that they gave out their personal views. So this is not an endorsement of what they represent in any way, shape, or form. Francis Atwoli, if you may ask me, represents KANU. David Murathe, if you ask me, he represents Jubilee. Are we to say that these are the positions of these two entities, that is Jubilee and KANU? I do not think so. So let me tell you what I believe on where I am at this point is that we still have a long way to go. I've already started hearing people murmuring that it is too early to start talking about who or the kind of coalition that they'll endorse. Rightly so, just the other day, the president actually spoke and actually pronounced himself to the very fact that in 2022, he will know who to back. And you know, President Uhuru Kenyatta comes in with a lot of with a lot of say as far as Mount Kenya is concerned. So he has not spoken yet. So I don't want to preempt anything that's coming from David Murathe.
But Gabriel, if this is a political script that is to be observed, we have seen Murathe, the talk of House leadership changes that were looming in the ruling Jubilee Party, that came to pass. He talked of the BBI, so did Atwoli as well, that came to pass. There are proponents of a referendum that seemingly has the backing of the House on the Hill. They seem to be reading from a political script. It's not just two individuals. It seems more than two individuals, does it?
Because last time I heard, really, BBI did not have a lot of opposition. Same way with the referendum. These are two items that do not have a lot of opposition. And so we expect if they are in line with what Wanjiku wants, and I repeat it again, these two things that we are talking about, whether it's the BBI on the referendum, they must speak to the heart of Wanjiku, failure to which they are going to receive a lot of resistance. But be as it may, as we move along, I think the chips, if we are talking about the political chips are falling where they may, then we have a long way to go. Remember what I've just told you. There are instances where Jubilee will speak in one voice. And I also believe there is coming a time where KANU and other coalition partners within Jubilee are also going to speak. So what is David Murathe and Francis Atwoli trying to preempt? If you are telling me that there has been discussions within Jubilee and this is the stand that Jubilee is making, then we have a conversation. If you would be telling me the very same thing, that there is or there has been what you would call a joint conversation between KANU and this is the
Gabriel, you have made let me interject you at that point. Gabriel, you have made your point. Let me bring in Evans Wafula to the discussion. There are talks of a Mandela moment come 2022, but there are those who equally question and say this early endorsement is to entice and excite Odinga's followers. Is it so, Evans?
Thank you so much. I think we need to understand the matter that we are discussing about. If you want to discuss the Raila Odinga presidency, you must also understand Raila Odinga as a person. He has been described as an enigma of the Kenyan politics. Raila derives also the legitimacy to contest for the presidency. You know, in Kenya, the presidency is not about who endorses you. It also goes beyond the legitimacy. I mean, Raila has also been described as a person who is a movement. I mean, many people consider him as a movement. If you look at these factors that describe Raila as a person before thinking about his presidency, then you will understand where we are going to, whether it's going to be a critical part in the Uhuru succession. So I think both the Mutuma and Professor, we need to move away from looking at this from an academic point of view. Hard politics is that Raila has been in the ballot for almost four times.
Yes, he has vied for the presidency. Evans, he has vied for the presidency 4 times. In 1997, when he came third, in 2007, 2013, and 2017.
Yeah. But the question we should be asking ourselves: has he ever won an election? That's the question that people should answer. And we see in the political landscape whether Raila has ever won an election in this country, and whether he's an electable politician. So if you look at Raila in the context of other political players, one of the critical things you need to be addressing is the political movement behind Raila. ODM as a party, for example, is a movement, is a political movement that cuts across the country. But the problem in our country is that presidential candidates or people perceive or purport to be going for the presidency and look at it in the context of political party persuasion, but beyond the national outlook. So one of the things I think when we discuss Raila's presidency and where I think I'm leaning towards is that, is Raila electable? Is he a presidential material? If I ask you, for example, a simple question, give me a name and a face of anybody who can succeed Uhuru Kenyatta. I mean, there are names that will be flouted, but these names should not be looked into consideration of somebody controlling a certain ethnic bloc or a certain political persuasion. But you look at Raila now. Look in Africa. He has a platform in Africa.
All right, Evans. You say look at the political circles. Identify anyone who has the stature and the leadership qualities of Odinga. You also talk of the question of the institution, the party, which is ODM. But if one is to ask, that has not led to a fruition of taking him to the house on the hill itself.
But one of the critical things is that because our politics is tailored within political parties, and also there's a bit of ethnic persuasion, that ODM has prided itself as a national party cutting across the country. There are parties that will tell you work in this country. There are parties that are very popular in certain regions of the country, and that is one. Before you think that you can you can go for the presidency, you look at your party beyond your ethnic bloc or your ethnic persuasion, and look at which other people you brought in. Look at the handshake is a critical thing for Raila Odinga. It goes beyond ODM as a party, and that is where Raila has mastered the political chessboard.
All right, Evans Wafula, thank you for that response. Let me get back to Herman Manyora, a residential analyst. But before that, I see quite a number of feedback. Washira, who is watching from Nyeri, says this is the legacy of Uhuru, to be the first president of the Republic of Kenya to be disowned by his own community. Quite a harsh comment, I would say. Nonetheless, let me get back to Herman. We talk of an endorsement, we talk of a presidency. This will definitely need votes from across sections of the country, which begs the very important question, is Raila Odinga's candidacy, presidency, sellable in Mount Kenya, Central Kenya at large?
You could say yes and no. You could say no because if you base yourself on the situation on the ground, like the viewer has just said, and I agree with him, that as of now, Mount Kenya is not very receptive to Raila Odinga, as of now. But like they say in politics, a day, things change. It is also possible that things could change, not just because of time, but because of Uhuru's trajectory. If the mountain is made to believe, to understand, and to know that they are in with Uhuru Kenyatta, and that Uhuru Kenyatta supports Raila Odinga, that could change with time. I know the people of the mountain. They make their decisions at the very last moment. So it is possible that the mountain could vote for Raila. It is also possible they may not vote for him in significant numbers. That would mean they will have defied Uhuru Kenyatta, like your viewer is saying, and it's going to be for the first time. However, I don't think if we were to go beyond Mount Kenya, Raila will still have a problem. I think if you look at the elections Raila has been in from 2007, those 3 elections, he has more or less garnered about half of the votes. So I don't think he will really be dying to get Mount Kenya votes. I think I've always said, in my thinking, Raila Odinga really just needs state neutrality. He just needs the state to be neutral, and whether or not Mount Kenya votes for him in any significant numbers or not may not be that important to him. I keep arguing that really Uhuru support and by extension Mount Kenya vote for Raila Odinga will simply be a top-up bonus. So
A
yes.
pop-up in which sense,
if you were to
Herman,
base was-
understanding the number of registered voters, some counties, as far as Kiambu and other counties are concerned, have high numbers, which in politics matter.
Yes. But you see, even with those high numbers, and with the terrible turnout, terrible in the positive sense, those sides of about 87% turnout, 85 onwards. Even with that high turnout, with those millions of votes, it was not easy to defeat Raila Odinga. That's what I'm saying. They were almost 50-50. And that has been the situation. I don't see much changing. So if the votes that Uhuru got from the mountain do not go to William Ruto, not just in the same numbers, but with the same turnout, with the same excitement and euphoria and enthusiasm. If that is missing, just the turnout alone, if it drops from 87, 85 to 75%, Raila is home and dry, because then that denies William Ruto the votes he would have had, the votes that saw Uhuru Kenyatta win in 2013 and 2017. That's what I'm saying. In other words, he would like to get those votes. If I were Raila Odinga, I would want to get them. But I'm saying, even minus those votes, and believing that it is unlikely that people will leave their hospital beds, go and vote for William Ruto from Mount Kenya, like they did for Uhuru Kenyatta, it's unlikely he will be such a scare to Raila Odinga. That's what I'm,
all right, let me bring back Gabriel to the discussion. Understanding that there were, and there still are, political perceptions about Raila in central Kenya, will one then suppose that he will need a political sanitization to face the mountain?
You know, it gets exciting every time you listen to my good brother Hammond. What he said, I think it's a little bit off, and I mean this with all due respect, because he's taking it to be everything constant. You must realize two things. You're talking about Raila's numbers that include the Mulembe Nation and the vote from Kalonzo Musyoka. Now, if everything is equal, then I would agree with him. But then we have to question, will the Mulembe Nation be with Raila? Will the Eastern Bloc also be with Raila? What I'm trying to engage as this evening is the games of numbers, I think, will be decided honestly in the final tier of the electoral period, or this period of 5 years that was given to Jubilee. I honestly believe as we move towards the election day, as we move to form for people to start coalescing around what you would call coalitions, then a winner probably will start emerging at that point. At this point, let me tell you, it is very hard to judge because things are not constant. NASA is no more. And as you can see, there is infighting within Jubilee.
All right, Gabriel, let's talk of the question of perceptions about Raila Odinga in central Kenya.
Yes. And you see, I've always said this, and I'll repeat it again. The mountain has not been receptive on Raila's presidency, and I can understand why. Think about it this way. And I'm not saying, from where I sit, I'm not saying Raila is a bad person, but there has been a constant push throughout the years. You're talking from 1990 something, and Herman Manyora will bear me witness, where Raila's name has actually been mentioned in bad light in Central Province throughout all these years. So what, as you called it, what will this thing be that will sanitize him so that Mount Kenya can vote for Raila? And that's why I'm saying at this point, everybody is looking up to the current president, Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, to see the kind of path that he will show the mountainous region. And that's why I am so keen to point out to this little fact that the president himself mentioned time and time again that when the time comes, he will show his people where to go.
And if that were to go, Gabriel, let me interject you at that point. You say he promised and he said that publicly that he will show the people on where to go as his term comes towards the end. If that where to go, if that place is in Odinga, will Central Kenya buy that idea?
Well, at that point, we have to wait and see. We will have to see, we have to gauge or gauge the kind of support that the president will be getting at that time. By the way, this one, you have to give it to him. He is still the leader of not only Jubilee, but he's still seen today as the voice of the people from Mount Kenya. So when the right time comes, I think there's going to be an element of dialogue where people will tell him, you know what, I do not think this is the right way we want to go, or I think we will follow you to the letter. So I think it's dicey at this point. But if everything again remains constant and the president says, this is the direction I want you to head, then so be it. I think at that point, people will be able to make up their minds. The question we should be asking is this: what is going to change? What is going to change between now and then? Politics in our country, as we have seen throughout time, is very sporadic. People tend to change with the time. And like Haman said, you know, a week in our politics is a very long time.
All right, Gabriel, point well made. Evans, Murathe says, and both Atwoli have also said that they are making these statements as individuals. They didn't point out to the president or the president's political realignment or alignments. But assuming that probably and just probably the president endorses Raila Odinga come 2022, will that not perfectly play to the notion of the dynasty versus the hustlers again?
Let me just correct one thing. I think the practice of political endorsement is all over the world. You've seen in the US, people endorsing Joe Biden. So I think it's very proper and it's very okay for anybody to endorse a perceived presidential candidate. But I think my colleagues are avoiding to address that critical question, the Kikuyu question in the Kenyan politics. Remember, perhaps, and I'm not very sure, this would be the first time that there will be no Kikuyu in the ballot. And I think if we, from independence, the Kikuyu
there are some who have shown interest even though they haven't specified of the position they want.
But we have to be just very fair with ourselves and honest with ourselves, that in the event that the Kikuyu will not have a candidate in the ballot, that is when we will be talking about where will they go and where will they vote. I think as far as we are concerned, I think, and this is we're not blaming them, but this is the problem we have with our politics, the way it's been tailored. It's been very ethnic politics that we've been witnessing since independence. And if in the event that they don't have a candidate, then their vote will be out for grab. Remember, very important, the alliance between Dr. William Ruto and Uhuru Kenyatta was an alliance of convenience. And I think that once we go to the election and once we know who are the proper candidates, I think even in central Kenya, the DP has very hard questions to answer. And I think that's when you will see movements coming in Central. Remember the independent candidates of Central. It is an alliance of big wigs, people who have resources, people who have, and they still feel that William Ruto conspired to remove them from political power. So I think at that particular time, we will see how the politics of Central Kenya will play. But coming
prospectively, if Uhuru endorses Raila Odinga, will that not play perfectly to the script of the hustler versus the dynasties?
I think I want to refuse to endorse that notion, because I think democracy is maturing in this country. We've been going through a transition. And I think it's been very clear that anybody is fit to contest for the presidency. So even you, if you want to contest for the presidency, you can contest for the presidency. So I don't think that the issue of dynasty should play in our politics. But the endorsement of Raila, if Uhuru Kenyatta, for example, endorses Raila, it will be a game changer.
All right, we'll talk of endorsements and the history of endorsements in as far as the Kenyan politics is concerned. You are watching Pundits Night with me, Abu Bakr Abdullahi. Time for us to take a short break. We'll be back with much more of this discussion after this break. Remember, you can be part of this discussion. The hashtag to use is Pundits Night. Text us on 22047. On 22047, James Omufundia says, thank you for giving us news, nice news and movies. On Facebook, Felix DeFrank Muramba says, you are in for a rude shock. Hustler Nation is rising up. You'll just provoke us. In his reference, I think he understands best. Paul Mwangi says, it's Kenyans to decide, not Murathe and co. We are waiting to see what direction Uhuru wants to take, but we are not going to follow anyone blindly for this matter. He says he's a political analyst from Nyeri. Kipyogan Rono Emmanuel says the Hustler Nation will triumph. Raila's candidature to him, he says, is dead on arrival. Keep talking to us on 22047. The hashtag to use is Pundits Night. We'll be back with this discussion after this break. Welcome back to Pundits Night. Thank you for, as always, choosing to stay with us here on TV 47. We are making sense of the endorsement of Raila Odinga's presidency by Kotu Secretary General Francis Atwoli and Jubilee Vice Chairperson David Murade. You can be part of this discussion. Text us on 22047. The hashtag to use is Pundits Night, as well as you can call us on the number on your screen so that your voice, just as it matters, will be heard on air. Let's get back to our discussion. Haman, let me ask you this question. There seems to be a problem, though, with endorsements, isn't it? Uhuru was endorsed in 2002 by Moi. He failed. The system is believed to have endorsed and had Mudavadi as its favorite in 2013. That did not bear any fruition. There are problems with endorsements. They don't come scot-free.
On their throat. And in politics, people react to a situation where they are being forced to go for somebody. But again, in politics, there are dynamics, and those dynamics then determine from time to time, in particular instances, what goes on. I think in this case, and for us in Kenya, the endorsement really is about the mountain. So it really is not about the whole country. The whole country may care less what Uhuru says in terms of who he supports. But it is his people who right now are resisting the attempt to have somebody like Raila Odinga be endorsed by Uhuru Kenyatta. But I know, and I've told you before, this program, that our people from the mountain have this habit of pretending they are not doing something, but when they do it, or they shift. They may not be the only people who do that. Secondly, that endorsement is not for one individual. I think 2022, we are going to have a situation where there is a team. And for as long as a significant player from a community is within that team, it's always going to be very easy for that community to have that candidate resonate with them, the flag bearer of that team. Just much the same way there was Kalonzo, Mudavadi, and Raila Odinga, and for NASA. So I'm seeing a situation whereby if the people of the mountain are convinced sufficiently that their interests are with Uhuru Kenyatta, and that Uhuru is assuring them that the only way their interests will be taken care of is for them to listen to him as he endorses Raila Odinga, I can tell you it will come to pass. I am almost certain at the right time, Murade will not be a lone voice. Murade will not be a lone voice because you see what is happening. Now, the entire leadership of Mount Kenya region is with Uhuru Kenyatta in the handshake.
What kind of a power and influence politically will an exiting president have to decide for a province or even the Mount Kenya region?
What I'm saying is this. People from Mount Kenya have a significant stake in this country, much more than any other community in terms of their economic power, in terms of their interest, sometimes even a sense of entitlement. If they are assured that for the first time in a long time, they are not producing a presidential candidate, as I suspect, that brings a situation where they will be, I'm assuming, and I think I'll be right, that brings a situation where they will be very keen on who to support, given that they don't have a direct candidate for that matter. So I see, if they are convinced sufficiently that the person to carry their interest is Raila Odinga, but there's something else we seem to be forgetting. We seem to be forgetting that Uhuru may not be very far from this thing. Supposing at the last moment, even appearing to be reluctant about it, it does come out clearly through another bomb by Murade or somebody else, or even he himself, that indeed he's willing to be Raila Odinga's prime minister. That will change the situation. So again, it depends on who from Mount Kenya they will front to work with Raila Odinga. That will help change the whole picture and the whole thing.
All right, and before we move from that, I see on 22047 quite a number of your feedback is coming through. Someone who has not mentioned his or her name says, people never vie for presidency, one is crowned by the powers that be. Still on 22047, another person says, Mount Kenya has already decided it is the hustler. And nonetheless, let me bring back Gabriel Muduma to the discussion. Gabriel, how much of a fruition or a benefit is this endorsement from the handshake?
Well, I'll tell you something about the handshake, and I'll make the fact that you have so many people who seem to think within the Mount Kenya region that the handshake may be something fruitful or may bring goodies in the final end. The fact of the matter is many people have not joined that bandwagon yet. Now, we do not know, or personally, I hold on to the view that I have no idea why most people have joined in on the bandwagon of the handshake. And now you seem to have been introduced to something else called the one man, one vote, one shilling. And I think this is what now the Mount Kenya region is looking at and saying, you know what, if this is something that will come to benefit the region, then I think we are going to be in this bandwagon. Now, is the one man, one vote, one shilling going to be part and parcel of what you call the BBI? We have to wait and see. But more than that, there is something that probably we need to be alive to. Mm-hmm. One, you cannot run from this thing people are calling the hustler nation. And I will tell you why I feel it may be something that may bring some great element of political stalemate as we move along. It is because you have people who do not know anything else than this bandwagon. How and what do I mean? You have the collegiate who are born in the 1990s. Mm-hmm. In 2013, when the president and William Ruto are taking over government, these people are just 13 years old. They didn't understand much. Mm-hmm. Fast forward to today, 8 years later, they seem to have an idea of what is going on, and they've just been introduced to the hustler nation. Are we going to see divorce from the way we've thought of politics, myself and Manyora? Where we've thought that what really matters in politics is where somebody comes from, is where the region of our representative or of our representation is coming from. Are these young people, these collegiates, are they going to make us see something different in our political landscape? Remember, Obama came in because of these people called the collegiate. They are vicious. Uh-huh. Once they believe in something, they go out for it. Are we going to see something like this?
Gabriel, with respect to young people, an age bracket that I individually belong to, they have also been criticized for following the thematic lyrics of the people who sway them to vote in one way or another, courtesy of either monetary value or anything else. They have also received a backlash in as far as their decision-making independence is concerned.
Justifiably so. And that's why I'm telling you, they are vicious. They are not going to apply the kind of political logic myself and Haman and our brother here and yourself, Abdulkadir, are going to apply. They will follow a movement because they believe it actually engages or actually sorts their problems. So I think this is not something to just look at from a point of view of, you know what, with time they'll get to see or they'll have a political historic value. No. Remember, I have given you as historic precedents. The former president of the United States, Barack Obama, was largely voted by the young collegiates. Uh-huh. What did they see in him? I mean, he was the first black president America has ever produced. And why? They understood his language. They understood what he was talking about. And guess what? Most importantly, they understood what he represented.
And so is Kenya politically mature? Is Kenya politically mature and in reference to the electorates to make decisions based on ideas rather than what we are used to?
I honestly hope and it has been my prayer for far, far too long, that when it comes to maturity of our politics, that we will vote for people based on their content and ability to deliver.
All right, Gabriel, let me interject you at that point and bring Evans to the discussion. I'm looking at the statement of Atwoli, which he says, and I quote, Kenya is a democratic country and anybody can offer their candidature. But I can tell you that the only person who can unite this country is Raila, somebody who is politically mature. Part of this political maturity in the political circles is due to his experience, a long-serving ex-member of parliament, a former minister of energy, roads, a former prime minister, a former housing minister as well. Looking at the experience of Raila Odinga, and notwithstanding that experience, when statements such as the only person is used, this sounds as though it is a one-sided affair.
I think actually it's trying to legitimize Raila Odinga's candidature or presidency. But I think it's important if I just correct my colleague Muzuma here. I think it's wrong and misleading to talk about the Hustler Nation in the context in which you're talking. Remember, there are people in this country just know that 2 ethnic tribes have governed this country since independence. Would you explain that in the context of an Hustler Nation? There are people who know since independence, only 2 ethnic tribes have been in the seat of power governing this country. And now we are talking about the DP coming to extend the same notion that we will only be governed by 2 ethnic tribes. So it is very fluid and very misleading to talk about the Hustler Nation in the context of William Ruto, or talk about the dynasty in the context of Raila Odinga, or maybe Uhuru Kenyatta. So I think we need to really be able to understand that. But I think what Atwoli has said, and what speaking and saying that he's the only person, I think we need to understand Raila as a person. And that's where we started from this discussion. But if we understand and package Raila as a person, then we'll understand his candidature for the presidency. I think probably he might, and this is what I always am afraid to say, is that he might probably be a kingmaker, the way people have always perceived him to be a kingmaker, and not necessarily go for the presidency. But that's what we'll wait and see.
Evans, at that point, it's factually wrong to posit that Raila Odinga, quote, is the only person who can unite this country. Is it so?
I don't agree that he's the only person, because look, Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta coming in the handshake, have been able to unite, and they are able to unite the country. So I think our politics has already, I think from the moment we experienced the transition, from the moment we had the liberation, I think it's a fact that no single person, whether Raila Odinga without the support of any other political parties, can even ascend to power. There's no single candidate who has gone to power without a coalition. Even Jubilee is a coalition. I think we don't like talking about it. It's a coalition. And that is why you see it's experiencing the same problems that NAC experienced. So I think we've used Jubilee to think that is a political movement that is a single party. No, Jubilee is your TNA and URP, and that's a fact.
All right, let me read quite...
Abdikadir, could you do me one favor? Just give me 1 minute to answer to my brother. I think he never got me right when I said about the Hustler Nation. And I want you to get me right. At the advent of 2013, my friend, there was a Kikuyu president called Moi Kibaki, ran away from trying to sell a tribal card of they've been in government for all this time. Young people, I'm telling you, my brother, these young people are vicious. They are tribalists. They don't care.
Gabriel, I think Gabriel, Evans has a problem with the terminology of the Hustler Nation in reference to young people. You are classifying them as hustlers.
You see, that's what I'm telling you. You see, that hustler, that's what I'm telling you. Be afraid of that Hustler Nation, because to them, they don't care what that hustler means.
And which begs the question, Gabriel, why? Gabriel, let me interject you at that point. Why are you classifying young people as hustlers and of Hustler Nation?
No, I am not classifying them. I am telling my good friend, the hustler brand, young people can identify with. I am not saying it's a good thing or a bad thing. I am just trying to say, be afraid of that identity, because many of them Go to what we call Vitongojiduni. Go to anywhere you see young people. They are identifying themselves as hustlers. Remember, when we were coming to 2013, all right?
Yes.
We thought, all right, we were against two young leaders who are actually at the ICC. There was no remote connection that these people would take over power. Guess what? They became president and deputy president. So what I'm trying to help my brother with is disassociate from thinking that most of our young people will follow a prescribed political pattern. They never do. As a matter of fact, they have changed everything we know in history. And that's why I gave you an example of Barack Obama.
All right, and Gabriel, you have made that example. You have made that example, and of course, the patterns are made. Gabriel,
just a clarification. I think it's also important to note that, for example, in Western Kenya, young people are saying, it's time for Musalia Mudavadi. Is Musalia Mudavadi a hustler? I know he's associated with...
Evans, there's no question that there is a pattern, and there are patterns, and young people will choose from the pattern and the patterns that they like. And nonetheless, let me go through some of the feedback here on 22047. Thompson says Murathe is just campaigning for Peter Kenneth to be the running mate of Raila. Mutegi says Raila versus Peter Kenneth, Ruto versus Mwangi wa Iria, Mudavadi versus Mutua 2022. Your opinion? Someone as well on 22047 says, Mount Kenya, we have settled for the hustler. That is Mudhuri from Taita. Nonetheless, those are some of your feedback. Let me get to Haman. Looking at the feedback and looking at the discussion, when you talk of Central Kenya, there is the aspect of the Ruto factor in the equation of that central cake. How much of an importance will it be to anyone who wants to vie for presidency in competing for Central Kenya, in as far as William Ruto is still in the equation?
Let's quickly just comment. One, somebody says, I think that truly Raila is the only person, and somebody is questioning why only two people. You know, when there is war and the drums are beating, it takes only one person to stop the drums. So there will be nothing wrong with an individual, two people being able to silence the drums, and that Uhuru and Raila did that in March of 2018. And again, quickly to comment on what Gabriel, my friend, is saying about young people. We all would want that situation. We know how much tribalism has done to destroy this country. We would wish to have a country where people are judged not by, to quote Martin Luther King, and a color, not by their tribe, but by the content of their character and the ability of leadership. Right. Unfortunately, what we want and what we dream of may not be realized today. So for that reason, my friend Gabriel, there is only one demographic in this country. It's the demographic of tribe. In fact, research has shown in Africa, the most tribal people are people like Gabriel and I. The more educated individuals are, the more tribal and ethnic oriented they are. If you follow discussions on social media, Gabriel, you realize that there is a lot of tribal war going on among young people. So when these young people go to vote, they will forget everything else. They will remember the Kikuyus, the Luyas, the Luos. It's unfortunate, but that is not about to change tomorrow. Now, the mountain and the hustler. What I've said is this. I talked to some very senior Kenyan. Actually, he was a former general. And he told me, William amepanda Sumu Central, Mount Kenya region. That is true. If elections were held today, whether Murathe likes it or not, William Ruto will carry the mountain with him by 10 o'clock, as Atwoli would say. But I am also equally and acutely aware that situation will not obtain for long. And I've been trying to say even this evening, when Ruto hit the ground running and Mount Kenya region, after the handshake, everybody was with him, including leaders of industry, the billionaire club, including all the leadership of that place. If you are keen, you realize today there are no leaders with him. All governors, all senators, apart from one, all business leaders, they have shifted already with Uhuru Kenyatta. Even MPs have been shifting. So to the extent that the leadership of the Mount by 20...
Herman, you also realize there's a difference between the leadership of the region and the people themselves.
That's where I was going. And I'm saying, as we get closer to 2022, let me tell you without any fear of contradiction or doubt, that the leadership will be entirely with Uhuru Kenyatta, as it almost is as we speak today. Now, then you ask that question, a very important question. But then you must never depart. Don't be like Gabriel Muthuma. Do not forget we are in Kenya. Kenyans will vote where their leaders vote. It is quite possible by 2022 that may not be the case. But that may be asking for too much, stretching your imagination. And I'm saying, if we go by what we have always been, what we are today, what we are likely to be by 2022 and even beyond, the people of any region will certainly vote with their leaders. And when that region is Mount Kenya, it is even more so. There is nowhere in this country other than Nyanza and now Rift Valley because of William Ruto, where people vote with their leaders more than Central. You will hear a few months to election that this is where we are. In 2011, 2012, the late John Michuki, rest his soul, in Limuru, he just said, if you want to speak to us, to the Agekoyo people, you must do so through Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. And from that day, who unto you if you are Peter Kenneth? And that brings me to Gabriel Muthuma. Gabriel Peter Kenneth was really resonating with young people. But the time to vote came, the tribal thing took over, and they all swung to Uhuru Kenyatta. So I'm saying the mountain is unlikely not to listen to his leadership come 2022.
All right, Herman Manyora, thank you for that comment. I understand we are extremely out of time, but one last question for Evans. Evans, if tonight you are Raila Odinga, the political figure that we are discussing on this show tonight, and you have an endorsement from Murade, you have an endorsement from Atwoli, what will politically be going through your mind?
I think first is how to bring the nation together. I think the endorsement of both Murade and Atwoli would not be enough for Raila Odinga, but it's how to bring the country together. It's very important also to note that we need to depart from this notion of hustler nation. Because if we talk the hustler nation, for example, and you link it to leaders like, for example, the DP, I think he's among the top 100 wealthiest people in this country. And I think it's very wrong to associate people who are languishing in poverty, who are hustling every day, associate them with somebody who is among the top 100 richest people. I think we need to be very, and I agree with the professor that our politics is so ethnic. So in a manner that the ethnic fabric is a threat to our democracy and the country as a whole. So we need to look at issues that are very critical. We need to understand that our national fabric as a country is based on democracy. And I think we need to forget these things. We're talking about hustler nation, talking about and address the issues that are very critical.
It won't be easy to forget. It's a political narrative driven by some for their own interest or even to show and prove a point.
And that is why I'm telling you some politicians are hell-bent to ensure that things happen as usual and as normal. I think it is now for the first time, and I said before, is that we might be going to a ballot where there's a game changer with their names that might not be in the ballot. And this is critical in going towards defining where we go as a country in the next political dispensation. So we need to just wait and see what happens, because I think when you talk about the Uhuru succession, I think it started a long time ago. I mean, we're not waiting for 2022. We are seeing what is the deep state. People are talking about the deep state. And deep state is part of the succession, and we need to confront it as it is.
All right,
Evans
Wafula and Herman Manyora, Gabriel Muduma. Gentlemen, that's all the time we had for the show tonight. Thank you once again for making time for us tonight on Pundits Night.